Hello.
Hello.
We're Karni and Saul. We're a directing duo, and we mix live action with animation. We've been working for 10 years. We are repped by Aardman Animations, and we've made music videos, commercials, and 2 short films, which we're going to talk about today, together with a bit about our creative process.
When we got a call from Jason, a producer in Aardman, asking us to do this talk for Wildscreen, we have to say our first reaction was, why us, and what do we have to do with natural history? But then we sat down and looked over our showreel, and we saw that oddly every project that we've done, or almost every project, features animal or wildlife or environmental issues, and that was actually quite refreshing for us to find out.
I think we realized that for us, we use nature as sort of an emotional trigger, maybe a storyteller, maybe a backdrop, maybe a sort of emotional landscape, things that we love and we fear we represent through animals or through nature. So it might not be in the classic way, but it's our way. And I think it might be to do with kind of our basic instincts and being human, and something that comes from the sort of under layer, like the subconscious. We realize that in our films we have racing snails, animals escaping a flood, a character made from recycled material, insect tattoos that come to life, old ladies that turn to birds, a girl sneezing flowers, endless nature shots, not to mention hundreds of talking flies, and even a sex scene with a giant fly-woman hybrid, which we weren't allowed to show today because it's a bit naughty.
The first clip we want to share with you is our first short film. It's called Turning. It's based on a short story by Linda Saxon. We found that in a collection of short stories that Murakami edited, which is great. I think it's called Birthdays.
Yeah. Birthday Stories.
Birthday Stories. It was produced by BBC and Lighthouse down in Brighton, and it was nominated for BAFTA in 2011, which we always mention.
Didn't win.
Let's watch it.
So that was obviously just a small clip. You can see the whole thing online. Basically, the story is about a boy's birthday, and he receives these 3 old ladies who give him this gift of a story of a skinless prince. And it deals with a lot of issues like skin and age and identity. And we really fell in love with the storytelling because it was very playful. And it was told from a boy's point of view, so quite naive and free and open to interpretation. And that's what we really, really loved about it. Sort of a memory of an afternoon rather than an exact description.
Yeah, we're always eager and looking for stories that have the fantasy element of them embedded in the story, so we don't need to go into excuses of flashbacks or memories. This story has the fantasy so in the body of the story, and it was really exciting finding visual ways to represent it.
And I guess what we also really liked and tried to create was that feeling of the old ladies seeming to be birds in the boy's mind's eye. He saw them as old or beautiful birds, and we described old age in that way as well, as sort of lovely, glorious birds coming for afternoon tea, and that made it, you know, all the more exciting, really.
We were asked to talk a little bit about our creative process, which creative don't really tend to comfortably do that, but we managed to sit down and come up with a few hopefully useful notes.
I think one of our main points that we always talk about is trying to be brave and bold and breaking the rules, even our own rules, I guess. And I think if we're sweating, if we're unsure, if people are telling us not to do it, then we know we're doing something right. And we try and stick to that as much as we can. When people ask us about our genre, we call it casual fantasy, because it doesn't usually have spaceships or aliens. It's just fantasy that might exist in the world, that interacts with real life quite seamlessly, and we treat it casually, I guess, in that sense.
An element we're really passionate about is, we call it relief of narrative, is how far we can stretch the narrative, where we can let go of it. We treat it a little bit like music, where you have harmony and your listener always wants you to go back to the bass, and it's done in music a lot, where you play around, not giving the viewer, the listener, the relief. And I think that's something we love doing, and I think that's part of our signature.
Yeah, and we think as long as there's a strong visual world, usually you can keep the viewer entertained and kind of wanting more. Another thing we do quite a lot is something we call visual treats, or breathers we like to call them, which are like little snippets of visuals that you don't have to think about, you don't have to digest, they aren't part of the narrative, but there's some visual enjoyment you can just take as pure pleasure and breathe, hence breathers. And the last thing that we talk about is get dirty, which really means embrace imperfections, have noise, have dirt, have things that feel real or out of place, embrace happy accidents, because that makes it more human, and I think we can relate to that a little bit more as humans, because we do have imperfections, so we try and be as imperfect as we can.
The next clip we're going to show is from our second short. It's titled Flytopia. It's based on a Will Self story, which is a very dark and funny story from one of his early collections. This was commissioned by Film 4 and produced by Film 4 and Creative England. And we were lucky enough to work with a local Adrian Attlee from Portishead on the music. Let's see it.
Flytopia.
We read Flytopia years ago, but back then it blew us away, and we always knew it would make a great short film.
It's sort of a story of a man losing his sanity and starting a communication with the insects in his house. There's sort of an infestation. Nature starts invading his home. And slowly he starts communicating with them, and he feeds them, and in return they service him in all sorts of manners. And it obviously doesn't end well, and if you want to know what the end is, you'll have to watch the film or read the story. But we really like that the flies are sort of a manifestation of his madness. You know, the noise itself, you know, the sheer amount of them, the discomfort you get. We use that to try and create something that would be disturbing, that throws you out of your comfort zone, and describes his sort of detachment from reality in a way.
Yeah, again, the fantasy in this film is very much like in Turning, where we kind of use the child's imagination to excuse the fantasy. This is using madness, but we love this story a lot.
And we call it an itchy film, and we sometimes sit in audiences and see, and if they start scratching, then we're happy. So now I think for a creature I don't think any of you has ever seen probably before on the screen. It's its first time. I think it's the first time it's been caught on film. It's a llama owl. And this is the Staves winter trees. We hope you enjoyed our talk, and thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
White winter trees covered in snow. I don't mind, I don't mind. I think of you now, here in the cold. You won't mind, you won't know. But I never meant to say any of those things. Oh, I never meant to tell you how to be or how to think. Oh, I was wrong. Heavy of heart, weary of soul. You won't mind, you won't mind. Think of him now, fathoms below. You won't mind, you won't know. But I never meant to say any of those things. Words can sound so cruel when you speak before you think. Oh, I was wrong. But you didn't understand that my heart was in your hands. You were so blind, blind. I promised you that I'd never let you down. Oh, but I couldn't love you any less. white winter trees covered in snow. I don't mind.